Conflicts have been a problem between people for a long time before the biggest issue was whether or not to eat breakfast. One of the main ways people solve major conflicts is by waging war. War has been around since 2700 BCE to be exact, but conflicts have broken out since the start of mankind. There are various contradicting opinions on war, some siding with it, others strongly opposing it. War is a triumph because it has solved many issues that wouldn't have been able to be solved in a different way and has led to new developments in cultures. But it is also a tragedy because of life lost, lost relationships between countries, and inventions that have had a negative impacts on people and places. The mental state and other human influences is a big factor in why war exists. It is mainly caused by tribe mentality. Tribe mentality is the state of mind in people that belong to differing cultures, religions, and where they live. Having people with the same beliefs and living in the same place makes them naturally form at least a loosely formed group. With this group of people with similar aspects, other groups that are different and live near them would be seen as strange, thus leading to mistrust and possible conflicts breaking out. This has been around since humans have existed as a species. Our ancestors' wild ways can be shown by some experiments people have done with wolves. What they have done is taking the puppies and trying to raise them as dogs. This has not brought the outcome they had hoped for. The wolves being raised still act wild despite their vigorous training. What does this have to do with people? Imagine the wolves as people. Just being trained to do what is right doesn't stop them from behaving wild at times. What about domesticated dogs? It's obvious that humans are more evolved than our canine companions, brain development speaking. We have had the intelligence to modify and evolve dogs to our liking, but our complex brain still has the remains of our past like them. But warfare isn't only caused by our history and human nature. People, especially those in power, can manipulate or just persuade the people of their domain to fight for them. In World War I, Lord Kitchener used campaigns and slogans to make the young men of the population interested in war. With this tactic on the leader's part, and stories written after some events, caused people who haven't experienced war firsthand and future fighters to have romantic notions on the idea of war. Well, now that you're war hungry, let's suit you up. When you see how far we've come in the tools used in war, their improvement is quite impressive. Some of the first items used on the battlefield were the spear and the shield. Now, can you imagine people fighting like that in this day and age? No? Well, that's because the human race has been constantly improving and updating everything, especially what is used in war. This enables them to keep up and not be defeated by other stronger nations. And with the constant rise of improvement in the items comes the need to do the same to stay on top. So in the first battles, the weapons seem very outdated, and they are. After those, they updated things to assist them, like riding on horses, protecting themselves with body armor, and updating spears to swords and bows for range. They started to develop different variations of bows and swords, assigning certain jobs for cavalry and archers. As time went on, the ranging weapons evolved and sometimes combined with other weapons to form all the variations of guns you see and are used now. The others went into cannons to be used on bigger targets. The horses they rode have mechanicalized into the tanks and airplanes that rule the field today. The uniforms varied, staying mostly uniform for each army, but varying in rank and position. The full body armor would normally have a symbol of the ruler, the country's flag, or some other symbolic image of the culture. Now there is more strategy put into the appearance of a soldier, having most of the armor being bullet resistant, as light as possible, and colored to have them camouflage into the surroundings. But now with the evolved technology like radar and using chemicals as weapons, the need to distinguish between each other is only needed a little. Now that you know what you'll be working with, it's time to show you the strategy. The ways fights in war have played out have either changed drastically or stayed mostly the same. A strategy that was demonstrated in 525 BCE was using what you know of the people you'd be fighting against and their beliefs. Cambyses II of Persia used his knowledge of the animals sacred to the Egyptian culture to defeat them with limited casualties. He sent out animals like cats and painted their images on the shields of his soldiers. The Egyptians did not dare anger their gods by hurting these animals and surrendered to the Persian army. A different type of strategy was used in the Napoleonic Wars and was the burning of Moscow. When this was done, a major military theorist, Clausewitz, couldn't believe it was an intentional act. A common ancient formation is the phalanx formation. It was very standard in the armies of Old Europe and originated in the Roman Empire in 3000 BCE and eventually was modified by various leaders. With all this strategy, there needs to be people to do the job, right? In World War I, there was many varying positions that aspiring fighters could be and different regiments to sign up for. There was training in the city in preparation for battles in the forest on open ground, for the Air Force and the cavalry. But eventually they didn't use the cavalry because they were basically useless since they weren't meant for trench battles. So the men that trained for it were changed to be machine gunners. The development in war has led to many improvements in daily lives of civilians and saved many lives, but it has led to weapons that are more dangerous and has killed people. As history has progressed, war is still in existence, thus showing how it is an important part of human culture.